My name is Mallory Carter. I was 34 years old when my sister decided that my place in our family came with a monthly price tag. Sunday dinner was almost over when she tapped her glass, looked directly at me, and announced that I would be taking over the payments on her BMW X7. $2,500 every month. She said the SUV was essential for her event business and that selling it would damage the image she had worked so hard to build. I suggested that an image was not worth going broke over. She leaned back and smiled as though she had been waiting for me to resist. Refuse, and you're out of this family. My mother said nothing. My father stared at his plate. Every relative at the table suddenly became fascinated by their food. I placed my fork beside my plate. Then I'm out. The room went silent, but it was not the silence of surprise. It felt rehearsed. That was the moment I realized the ultimatum might not have been spontaneous at all. Before I tell you what was hidden behind that demand, tell me, what time is it where you are, and what city are you watching from? I want to see how far this story travels. My mother recovered first. She told me not to embarrass my sister over something I could easily afford. My father reminded me that I had no children, no husband, and no mortgage. My sister's fiancé looked uncomfortable, but he remained silent. I did not defend myself again. I picked up my purse, walked out, and placed my phone on silent when I reached home. The next morning, I found 16 missed calls from my mother. Beneath them was a voicemail from my sister's fiancé. His voice was low and urgent. Mallory, Brooke didn't tell you the truth. The BMW was already 4 payments behind before dinner, and your mother planned the whole thing. By 7 the next morning, my phone had stopped ringing, but Ethan Walker's voicemail was still waiting. Ethan had been engaged to my younger sister Brooke for almost 2 years. I listened to the message twice before calling him back. He answered immediately and asked whether I was alone. Then he explained what my family had carefully left out at dinner. Brooke had financed the BMW X7 18 months earlier for Luster Lane Events, the luxury event styling company she had started after leaving her hotel management job. She claimed wealthy clients expected their event planner to arrive in a premium vehicle. What she had not told anyone outside the immediate family was that she had rolled the remaining debt from her previous SUV into the BMW loan. By the time warranties, fees, negative equity, and financing costs were added, her monthly obligation had climbed to $2,500. My parents, Denise and Raymond Carter, had co-signed because Brooke could not qualify a loan. At first, Brooke's business performed well enough to hide the problem. Then 2 major corporate clients canceled their annual contracts. A private event was postponed, and another client disputed a large invoice. Brooke kept spending as though the income would return. She paid assistants, rented warehouse space, bought imported table linens, and continued posting photographs from restaurants and resorts. Meanwhile, the BMW payments stopped. 4 installments were overdue. Ethan had refused to contribute because he had already put most of his savings into their wedding account. Brooke responded by taking money from that account without telling him. She used part of it for one earlier car payment and claimed the missing balance had gone to a vendor whose refund was delayed. Ethan discovered the withdrawal 2 days before our family dinner. When he confronted Brooke, she admitted the money was gone but insisted she would replace it as soon as I agreed to take over the loan. I had never agreed to anything. That detail did not matter to my mother. Denise had suggested making the demand at dinner because she believed I would surrender rather than disappoint the entire family in public. Several relatives had been told that I had already promised to help, but was suddenly reconsidering. They had not been invited to witness a request. They had been invited to pressure me into honoring an agreement that did not exist. I worked as a senior commercial insurance underwriter for a regional insurance company in downtown Columbus. My salary was stable, but I was not wealthy. I drove a 6-year-old sedan that had been paid off for almost 2 years. I rented a modest apartment and had been saving carefully for a down payment on a townhouse. Because I was unmarried and child-free, my family treated every dollar I did not spend on a spouse or child as money waiting to be reassigned. They never called it entitlement. They called it family support. After ending the call with Ethan, I opened my banking history. I searched every transfer containing my parents' names, Brooke's name, or the words emergency, repair, rent, insurance, and holiday. 7 years of transactions appeared. I had covered shortfalls in my parents' health insurance deductible. I had paid for Brooke's professional certification course. I had provided the deposit for her first apartment, contributed to 3 family vacation rentals, paid for an emergency furnace repair, replaced my father's damaged laptop, and sent dozens of smaller transfers whenever someone claimed they were temporarily short. The total exceeded $31,000. Seeing the number changed something in me. Each payment had seemed manageable when viewed alone. Together, they formed a record of a role I had never agreed to accept. I was not their emergency fund. I had simply been trained to behave like one. I canceled the voluntary monthly transfer I had been sending my parents for household expenses. I removed my credit card from Brooke's business software subscription and canceled the automatic renewal I had been covering for her booking platform. Then I sent one message to my parents and Brooke. I will not pay the BMW loan, and I will not fund any future family expenses. Do not contact my employer or come to my home. Brooke removed me from the family group chat within minutes. My mother sent a private response saying I had chosen money over the people who loved me. I did not answer. At 11:30 that morning, the receptionist at my office called my extension. Her voice was careful. Mallory, your parents are downstairs. They say they aren't leaving until you speak to them. 2 days after dinner, my parents carried the family argument into my office building. I refused to bring them upstairs. Instead, I met them in the public lobby, where security cameras covered every entrance, and my coworkers could not be drawn into the conversation. My mother stood when she saw me and immediately reached for my hand. I stepped back. My father remained seated, holding a folder against his chest as though we were about to negotiate a business contract. Raymond opened the folder and showed me a notice from the lender. Because he and my mother had co-signed, the 4 missed payments had already been reported on their credit histories. They had planned to refinance their home before his retirement from his facility's supervisor position. The lower payment was supposed to make retirement possible. Now their credit scores had dropped, the lender had suspended their refinance application, and the interest rates available to them were significantly higher. My father said they were not asking me to pay forever. They only needed 6 months of BMW payments while Brooke rebuilt her client list. 6 months meant $15,000, not including late fees. He spoke as though reducing the request from permanent support to temporary support transformed it into a reasonable proposal. You can afford it, he said. You have a good job, and no one depends on you. I depend on me, I replied. My mother told me that daughters were supposed to protect their parents from financial harm. I reminded her that they had voluntarily signed the loan. They had known the payments were overdue, hidden that information from me, and arranged a public ambush. No one had asked whether losing $15,000 would destroy the home purchase plan I had spent years building. You can delay buying a house, she said. Your sister could lose everything. Brooke bought something she could not afford. That does not make it mine. My father lowered his voice and warned me that pride could leave a person alone. Then my mother said something loud enough for several people near the elevators to hear. At this rate, you'll never have a family of your own. No decent person wants someone this selfish. Naomi Brooks, a compliance manager from my department, had entered the lobby during the conversation. She stopped a few feet away, pretending to check her phone while making it obvious that I was not alone. Her presence steadied me. I told my parents the discussion was over and asked the security desk not to admit them again without an appointment. My mother stared at me as though I had committed an unforgivable betrayal. My father collected his papers, and they left without saying goodbye. That evening, Brooke posted a 12-minute video on social media. She filmed herself sitting in her unfinished event warehouse, surrounded by boxes and folded linens. Her eyes were red, but her voice was controlled. She said her own sister had abandoned her during a business crisis. She described the BMW as a necessary company vehicle used to transport samples and meet high-end clients. She said our parents were facing financial damage because I cared more about buying a house than protecting my family. She did not mention that 4 payments had already been missed. She did not mention that our parents were co-signers. She did not mention the money taken from her wedding account. Then she tagged my employer. Brooke never directly stated that I had violated company policy. Instead, she said people who made financial decisions for a living should understand loyalty, risk, and responsibility. She asked viewers whether someone unwilling to support her own family could be trusted to evaluate other people's businesses. The implication was obvious. I did not post a response. I downloaded the video, saved screenshots of the caption and comments, and sent everything to Human Resources with a factual timeline. I explained that a family member was attempting to pressure me into assuming a private debt and had tagged the company after I refused. HR confirmed that my employment was not at risk, but advised me to preserve every message in case the harassment continued. Naomi stayed after work to help me organize the evidence. We listed the dinner, the voicemail, the lender notice, my parents' workplace visit, and Brooke's social media post. She asked whether I was all right. I told her I was certain about refusing the money, but less certain about how easily my parents had erased me. I had expected anger from Brooke. I had not expected my mother and father to decide that belonging to the family required a monthly payment. Naomi said, "You didn't leave them. They placed a price on the relationship and expected you to pay it." Just before sunrise on Thursday, Ethan called again. I answered on the first ring. I could hear shouting behind him. "There's a tow truck in Brooke's driveway," he said. "She's outside filming everything." The BMW disappeared from Brooke's driveway before most of the neighborhood was awake. I did not go there. Ethan sent me a short message confirming that the lender's recovery company had repossessed the vehicle without involving the police or creating the confrontation Brooke seemed determined to produce. She live-streamed almost 20 minutes of the process, pacing across the driveway in slippers while accusing the driver, the lender, Ethan, and me of conspiring against her. The video was supposed to prove that she had been victimized. Instead, it exposed details she had concealed. When the recovery driver explained that he was acting under the lender's authorization, Brooke shouted that she had been communicating with the company for weeks. She held up a stack of envelopes and accidentally revealed several past-due notices. She admitted that the lender had called repeatedly and that she knew repossession was possible. At one point, Ethan asked why she had not sold the BMW when he first suggested it. Brooke answered that selling it would have ruined her brand and still left a balance. That statement confirmed that she had understood the financial problem long before dinner. The lender later sold the BMW at auction. The sale price did not cover the remaining loan, late fees, recovery expenses, and negative equity. A substantial deficiency remained. Because Brooke and my parents had signed the contract, all 3 were legally responsible. My refusal had not created the debt. It had merely prevented them from transferring it to me. The consequences arrived without dramatic courtroom scenes or instant ruin. Collection notices began appearing. My parents' refinance application was formally denied. Their borrowing costs increased, and my father postponed his retirement. My mother, who worked as a pharmacy technician, began taking additional weekend shifts. Brooke could no longer afford her apartment and moved back into my parents' house. Her event company continued operating on a smaller scale, but without the BMW and several major clients, the image she had used to justify the vehicle collapsed. Ethan ended the engagement 3 days after the repossession. He had reviewed their wedding account and discovered that Brooke had taken more money than she originally admitted. The withdrawal used for the BMW payment was only one of several. She had also paid warehouse rent, a personal credit card, and a photographer, who had threatened to send an unpaid invoice to collections. When Ethan asked for complete financial records, Brooke accused him of humiliating her and said a future husband should trust her without demanding proof. He returned the engagement ring and moved his belongings out of their apartment. Before cutting contact, Ethan sent me screenshots from a private family thread that had been created without me. The messages began 4 days before Sunday dinner. My mother had written, "We need to ask while everyone is together. Mallory hates being judged in front of relatives." My father responded, "She will be angry, but she always gives in eventually." Brooke wanted aunts, uncles, and cousins present because she believed I would be afraid of being excluded from holidays. They discussed what each person should say if I hesitated. They even planned to remove me from the Thanksgiving guest list if I refused. One message stayed with me more than the others. Brooke had asked, "What if she actually walks out?" My mother replied, "She won't. She has never chosen herself over us." They had mistaken a pattern for a permanent obligation. When news of Ethan ending the engagement spread, Brooke claimed I had caused that too. Relatives began contacting me with variations of the same accusation. Some said I had destroyed her business. Others said I should have paid temporarily and settled the family dispute privately. One aunt told me that a loving sister would have prevented the repossession even if Brooke had made mistakes. I sent each person who contacted me directly the same factual timeline. It contained the 4 missed payments, the co-signed loan, the wedding account withdrawal, the planned dinner ambush, and the total amount I had previously contributed. I did not include insults or personal commentary. I ended with one sentence: "I will not discuss debts that I did not sign for." My mother responded by announcing a family mediation in a church community room. She told relatives that everyone needed to attend so the family could repair the damage I had caused. I initially planned to ignore it. Then Ethan forwarded one final screenshot from the private thread. It was a message my mother had written shortly before dinner. "She always pays when everyone is watching." I agreed to attend. A week later, every chair in the church meeting room faced the table where my mother expected me to apologize. Brooke sat between our parents with a folder, a calculator, and a legal pad. About 15 relatives filled the remaining chairs. Some looked angry. Others appeared uncomfortable but curious. No neutral mediator was present. My mother had called it mediation, but the room had been arranged like a hearing where my guilt had already been decided. Brooke began by saying she wanted to move forward. She presented a proposed 6-month payment schedule showing that I would transfer $2,500 on the first day of each month. She promised to reimburse me when her business improved. There was no repayment date, no interest, no collateral, and no explanation of what would happen if the business did not recover. She described the proposal as a compromise. My mother said the meeting was an opportunity to repair trust. My father said I needed to become the bigger person because I was the only family member financially capable of solving the immediate problem. I waited until they finished. Then I placed 2 documents on the table. The first was a ledger showing more than $31,000 in support I had already provided over 7 years. Every transfer included a date, amount, recipient, and purpose. The second was a set of printed screenshots from the private family thread. "I was not asked for help," I said. "You had already assigned me the debt." Brooke concealed the missed payments. Mom and Dad concealed that they had co-signed. "You invited relatives because you believed public rejection would prevent me from saying no." Brooke interrupted and said the screenshots were private. I agreed. So was the plan to manipulate me. Privacy does not turn dishonesty into honesty. One of my uncles studied the ledger and asked why Brooke had bought a luxury SUV when her business income was unstable. Brooke said successful clients judged appearances. A cousin asked why my parents had co-signed a loan they could not afford to repay. My father said they had been trying to support their daughter. Someone else pointed out that I had already paid Brooke's certification fees, apartment deposit, and several business subscriptions. The mood did not change all at once. A few relatives continued defending Brooke. One aunt said family members should not keep records of generosity. I replied that I had started keeping records only after my generosity was rewritten as selfishness. Another relative accused me of embarrassing my parents by exposing their messages. I told him I had not written those messages. Reading their own words aloud was not the humiliation. Choosing to write them had been their decision. Brooke pushed the payment schedule toward me. "You're enjoying this," she said. "You wanted everyone to turn against me." "No," I answered. "I wanted everyone to know what they were being asked to support." I removed my parents' house key from my key ring and placed it beside the proposed payment plan. Then I listed every remaining financial connection I was ending. I had removed myself from the shared streaming accounts, canceled my payments toward the family phone plan, closed the emergency payment arrangement my mother used for household expenses, and removed my card from Brooke's business accounts. No future bill would reach me automatically. No one would be able to spend first and ask permission later. My mother asked whether I was really prepared to walk away over a car. "This is not about a car," I said. "It is about all of you deciding that my money belonged to you before I entered the room." My father shifted in his chair. As more relatives questioned the loan, he tried to separate himself from the plan. He said Brooke had been desperate and had pressured him and my mother into supporting her. He claimed the dinner confrontation had been Brooke's idea. Brooke turned toward him in disbelief. Before she could respond, my mother struck the table with her palm. "That is not true," Denise said. Her voice shook, but she did not lower it. "I wrote the message. I planned the dinner because Mallory always gives us the money." No one spoke. My mother's admission did not sound like an apology. It sounded like frustration that the method had finally stopped working. I collected my ledger, left the screenshots on the table, and walked out without signing anything. 3 months after the meeting, the family had stopped calling, until my father was taken to the hospital. During those 3 months, the consequences of the BMW debt continued without me. Some relatives distanced themselves from Brooke after seeing the messages. Others blamed me for exposing private family conversations. Her event company lost several referrals after clients discovered the public videos and online arguments. Ethan refused all further involvement. The deficiency balance remained, and my parents continued receiving collection letters. Then Raymond experienced a serious cardiac episode while working. My mother left 6 messages in one afternoon. The first said my father wanted to see me. The second said, family should matter more than one argument. By the fourth, her tone had changed from pleading to accusation. She warned that I would regret staying away if something happened to him. In the final message, she said visiting the hospital would prove I was still a good daughter. I sat in my car outside my office and listened to every message. I felt fear, grief, anger, and guilt at the same time. My refusal was not easy simply because it was necessary. I remembered my father teaching me to drive, helping me move into my first apartment, and calling every winter to remind me to check the tire pressure. I also remembered him sitting silently while Brooke told me I could either pay or lose my family. I remembered him coming to my workplace and telling me that no one depended on me. I sent my mother one response. "I hope Dad recovers. He may send me a written apology when he is ready to acknowledge his part in the dinner, the hidden debt, and the workplace confrontation. I will not visit while the hospital is being used to test whether I can still be controlled." My mother replied that apologies should not be demanded from a sick parent. I said accountability was not punishment and ended the conversation. My father recovered after treatment and several weeks of cardiac rehabilitation. No letter arrived. He had been healthy enough to return home, speak to relatives, and discuss the family conflict, but he never wrote to me. My mother later told an aunt that my request had been cruel. That confirmed what I already suspected. They had wanted my presence as proof of obedience, not an opportunity to repair the relationship. The question troubled me for months. Should I have visited? Some people would say a hospital room should erase every disagreement. Others would say illness does not erase responsibility. I stopped looking for an answer that would satisfy everyone. I had not wished him harm. I had not prevented anyone else from visiting. I had simply refused to perform the role of devoted daughter while he continued denying what he had done. Life kept moving. At work, I completed a major commercial risk project and received a promotion. My new salary increased my borrowing capacity, but the greatest change came from the money I was no longer sending away. On the first day of every month, I transferred $2,500 into my own savings account, the exact amount Brooke had demanded for the BMW. Watching the balance grow felt strange at first. Then it felt honest. 9 months after the dinner, I purchased a modest townhouse in Westerville, just outside Columbus. It was not a mansion, and I did not pay cash. The down payment came from the savings I already had, the salary increase from my promotion, and the monthly amount I had refused to surrender. I took out a normal mortgage with a payment I could comfortably manage. Naomi and several coworkers helped me move. We carried boxes, assembled furniture, and ate takeout on the living room floor. I felt proud, but the day also carried grief. Buying my own home did not erase the fact that my parents had never asked to see it. Freedom and loss could exist in the same room. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, Brooke emailed me. The message began with what appeared to be an apology. She admitted the BMW had been reckless. She acknowledged that the social media video was unfair and that using relatives to pressure me had been wrong. For 3 paragraphs, she sounded more honest than she ever had before. Then I reached the final paragraph. Brooke explained that the deficiency balance was preventing our parents from repairing their credit. She asked whether I could contribute enough to qualify them for a consolidation loan. She said helping now would prove that we had both grown. I did not answer. On Thanksgiving afternoon, Naomi and several friends gathered at my townhouse. We were setting food on the table when my doorbell camera sent an alert. I looked at the screen and saw Brooke, Denise, and Raymond standing outside my new home. Brooke held a folder against her chest. By the time I reached the front door, Brooke was already holding up the folder she wanted me to sign. I opened the door but remained in the doorway. None of them had been invited, and I did not step aside. For the first few minutes, they said everything I had once wanted to hear. My father said his hospitalization had changed his perspective. My mother said the months without me had been painful. Brooke admitted she had allowed fear and pride to control her decisions. They said they missed me. They said Thanksgiving should not be spent apart. My mother glanced past me at the dining table and asked whether they could come inside so we could begin again as a family. I almost believed the visit was about reconciliation. Then Brooke opened the folder. Inside was an application for a debt consolidation loan, the remaining BMW deficiency, several of Brooke's business debts, and part of my parents' home equity balance had been combined into one proposed loan. Because my parents' credit had been damaged and Brooke could not qualify, the lender required a stronger cosigner. They wanted me. My father said the loan would protect the house and allow him to reconsider retirement. My mother said the monthly payment would be lower than the separate debts. Brooke promised she would make every payment once her finances stabilized. All I needed to provide was my income information, social security number, and signature. "So this is why you came," I said. My mother insisted they had also come because they missed me. My father said both things could be true. Brooke pushed the folder toward me and asked me not to punish everyone forever over one bad decision. "Whoa, one bad decision?" I repeated. "You missed 4 payments. You took money from Ethan. You planned the dinner. You threatened to remove me from the family. You contacted my employer. You blamed me when the car was repossessed. Then you apologized only long enough to ask for money again. Brooke's expression hardened. She said I was refusing to recognize how much she had suffered. I told her suffering did not transfer responsibility for a contract. I stepped back long enough to pick up a sealed box beside the entryway. It contained family photographs, childhood keepsakes, holiday ornaments my mother had given me, and several items my parents had stored in my old bedroom. On top was a written notice stating that future contact needed to stop. They were not to visit my home, contact my workplace, or send financial requests through relatives. I handed the box to my father. He read the first page and asked whether I was threatening them. I said I was establishing a boundary in writing because every verbal boundary had been ignored. My father's face reddened. He said that if I continued, he would remove me from his will. Years earlier, the threat might have frightened me. Now it only proved that he still believed access to money or property could control the relationship. I don't want your house, your savings, or an inheritance, I said. Anything offered as leverage is not a gift. My mother began crying and accused me of treating them like strangers. I reminded her that strangers had never demanded $2,500 a month as the price of belonging. Brooke held the loan papers against her chest. You're throwing away your last chance to have a sister. I looked at her and finally said what I had understood since the night of the dinner. I didn't leave because you bought a BMW. I left because you decided my place in this family cost $2,500 a month. You gave me a choice, and this is the choice you made permanent. My father said I would regret closing the door. My mother asked one final time whether Thanksgiving meant anything to me. I told her it did. That was why I was spending it with people who had come to share a meal rather than collect a signature. Then I closed the door. I did not stand at the window or watch the camera feed. I returned to the dining room where Naomi had quietly covered my plate to keep the food warm. No one asked me to explain immediately. They made room for me at the table, and the conversation slowly resumed. The aftermath was not dramatic. Brooke eventually closed Luster Lane Events and accepted an administrative position with a property management company. Her engagement to Ethan remained over. She and my parents continued paying the BMW deficiency through a negotiated repayment plan. My father delayed retirement. My mother continued taking additional weekend shifts. Some relatives remained loyal to them and continued describing me as cold. Others stopped contributing to financial emergencies after recognizing the pattern. I changed my phone number and blocked every remaining contact channel. I did not accept an apology because no complete apology ever arrived. There was no future meeting, no secret reconciliation, and no promise that we might try again someday. I did not receive a final message from Brooke that I saved for sentimental reasons. I did not wait for my parents to reverse their decision about the will. I continued working, paying my mortgage, and building a life that did not require me to purchase my place in it. Family support is not supposed to erase personal responsibility. Helping someone once does not give them ownership of everything you earn. Generosity offered freely is love, but generosity extracted through shame, threats, and public pressure is control. A relationship that survives only while one person pays for everyone else is not unconditional. Sometimes leaving is not revenge. Sometimes it is the first decision that stops the damage from continuing.
Thank you for following this story all the way through. Our situation and characters are fictional and made only for storytelling, entertainment, and education. We hope it reminds you that your greatest comeback does not need an audience, an announcement, or revenge. Sometimes it begins quietly when you choose a life that finally feels like your own.